Chapter 6. Shailesh, I want to talk to you about something, Geeta said to her husband. Can you come into the room? Shailesh was sitting at the breakfast table, where he had been for the last hour, nibbling at his food and reading the newspaper. Now, he asked, extremely irritated about being bothered before he had to leave for work. Geeta decided to let him be. She didn't want a fight in front of the children. She decided she would tell him about the swimming classes when he was going downstairs to the car. She went back to the kitchen as she pondered about her marriage. How she had forced herself to adjust to her husband and family. She had to work around his timings, learn to eat what he liked to eat, and ultimately stopped cooking anything she liked to eat because she couldn't be bothered to do that extra bit of work. She also had to socialize, if he wanted her to, with his friends, even though she thought they were the biggest misogynists in the world. Yes, her journey as a housewife had so far been about adapting, adjusting, behaving properly, and obeying in a family that had, supposedly, welcomed her. And she had done it perfectly. Along the way, though, she had forgotten who she was. It suited Shailesh beautifully. Shailesh's voice interrupted her thoughts. He announced he was leaving. Hurriedly, she put the flame to low and ran to catch him. She found him waiting in front of the elevator. "Shailesh," she said, panting, "I had to ask you something." "Geeta, what are you doing?" Shailesh exclaimed as he looked around in panic. "People will see you in your nightgown. Go inside." No one else was around, though. Geeta looked down at her fully opaque, half-sleeved kaftan that showed no part of her body except the ends of her arms and her bobbing head on top. She shook her head. "Shailesh, I wanted to ask you, swimming classes are starting today for ladies." The lift door opened and she held onto it as he got in. "Can I please join?" Shailesh was too busy with his mobile phone to bother listening intently to what she said. Without looking up, he remarked, "There's no need for you to swim, Geeta. Who will manage the house? I've no time. Please remove these thoughts from your head." Geeta let the lift door shut without saying another word. She would have managed the house perfectly, she grumbled under her breath. Without him. Like she had been doing for so many years. What was the use? If her own husband hadn't seen her eagerness, why should she even bother learning swimming? What good would come of it? She went back into the house and saw the poha had burnt, just like her heart. Yet again, Shailesh had left a searing hole and killed her hopes of doing something for herself. She called the clubhouse and told them to cancel her name from the swimming class. The attendant tried to convince her, telling her again that the lessons were for free. But Geeta refused. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about her respect. Shailesh was behaving like the conservative men from the meeting. He didn't want his wife to wear a swimsuit or get into the pool. It irritated her to no end that he didn't understand that she wanted to do something for herself, desperately. But he had never understood any of her wants. How did she even expect him to change now? Geeta served her in-laws some toast. Without waiting to hear their taunts of the simple breakfast she had made for them, she went into her room and locked the door. Every day she made elaborate breakfasts, lunches and dinners to keep them happy. Not once had they praised her for her cooking or for the fact that she took so much time and effort to make them happy. Shailesh barely noticed her cooking, gobbling up the food when he came home and not saying anything. When she asked him, he would comment, "The salt was too much." He never seemed to be pleased with her, no matter how hard she tried. She took a long shower, silently absorbing her feelings as she had done for years. Adapt, adjust, mold, she told herself. This was her life now. There was no use in hoping for anything different. In the early days of their marriage, she would seek her parents' advice for every time Shailesh said no to a request from her. Her parents would always tell her she needed to adjust to what her husband liked. Eventually, she stopped talking to them about anything important in her marital life. They would call and ask her how everything was, and she would simply say, "Fine." She didn't want to hurt their feelings, and she never wanted to create strife in the house too. She sat on the edge of the bed, looking out of their flat, which was on the 19th floor. It had been a blessing to marry him and get away from her parents' tyranny. They never let her do anything, and she was stifled. So when the rishta came for her to get married, she jumped at the offer. A great set of in-laws, who gave her a gold chain at the engagement and a high-rise flat with her own room. She thought it was a wonderful way to get away from her parents and live in Mumbai. After all, people called this the city of dreams, didn't they? What a farce that had been, she mused, as she looked through her closet to wear something that would cheer her up. In the early years, her bedroom became the nursery, where she slept with the baby, while Shailesh took the drawing room. They barely touched each other, except for the monthly ritual when he usually finished before she could even take off all her clothing. She never enjoyed sex with him, and soon she began to dread it. She gritted her teeth every time and treated it as another thing she needed to adjust to. "Geeta, chai?" asked her father-in-law from the other room for what she felt was the 10th time today. Geeta sighed. Maybe she should buy a flask and keep several cups of tea in that. When she thought about it, she realized that the number of times in a day she went into the kitchen just to make tea was staggering. She looked at the clock. She had an hour before she needed to fetch Anu from her school, diagonally across the road to Sapphire Towers. Today was one of those days when she was mighty depressed. PMS, she thought to herself, blaming her hormones. She hoped that her logic would make her feel better. But it didn't. Then the milk boiled over as she made tea, and she lost it. She started crying. Shailesh had destroyed her self-esteem, and now nature was teasing her with spilt milk. She wiped her tears with her dupatta and served the tea silently to her father-in-law. Her mother-in-law had gone downstairs to chat with the other old ladies, probably bitching about their daughters-in-law, she thought. They had a routine to chat every morning, while the younger women met in the evenings. It was a good arrangement, since none of them had to bump into each other. Geeta sat in her room quietly for a bit and picked up the book she had started reading. But her mind was racing too fast. She went to the desktop that was in the corner of the room for Renuka to practice her computer skills. It took forever to come on and showed some error. She had completely forgotten to call the computer engineer to fix it. Suddenly, Geeta felt as if she was in a pressure cooker. She had to do everything in the house. Besides cooking and straightening up after the entire family, she was also calling people to constantly fix things that were broken. The plumber, electrician, the carpenter. She was also looking after her children constantly, without the help of a maid. All they had was a cleaning woman who came in the morning and chopped the vegetables for Geeta to cook. She also took her in-laws for doctor's appointments and took care of them when they were sick. She remembered how 2 years ago, when her mother-in-law fell seriously ill and had to be taken to the hospital, Geeta was running between the hospital and home, managing a 2-year-old Anu and leaving Renuka with friends who were willing to look after her for a few hours post-school. Shailesh would come around 8 in the evening after work and sit with his mother for a little while. His mother would soon tell him to go home as he was tired from work, so he would do that, leaving Geeta to spend the night in the hospital too. She would quickly rush to the house early in the morning to make tiffin for the children and get them ready for school. Those were difficult days for Geeta. And mostly, she was alone. Shailesh's sisters, both settled abroad, did not come to see their mother, much less take care of her. And yet, after all that, once her mother-in-law was home again, Geeta did not receive a single thank you from anyone in the family. And now that Geeta was asking Shailesh for permission for this one little thing, he shot her down? It wasn't the first time, Geeta realized. He had done it before, when she had asked if she could take cooking classes. She even tried to convince him that it would benefit not just her, but the entire family. But it would have meant travelling to Dadar thrice a week and finding someone to take Renu home from the bus stop downstairs. Something that she thought her mother-in-law could have done, but she said it was too tiring to remember. Shailesh told her to drop the idea. Once, she asked him if she could take the kids to visit her parents every summer, and his reply was curt. "Who will look after my parents then?" So her parents would come to visit them instead, staying in a hotel for a few days, while she shuttled between the house and taking her children to see their Nana and Nani. Geeta shut off the computer. She wore a kurta and jeans and looked at herself in the mirror. Ugh, she felt extremely fat. Even though she was underweight for her age and height, today she felt bloated and uncomfortable. She hated that she had such small breasts. Even after 2 children, they hadn't grown as Sarita claimed hers had. She changed into a long anokhi skirt and a plain white kurti with mukesh, a present from her friends in the building for her birthday. She combed her dark, wavy hair slowly, hoping the time would pass by quickly before she had to pick up Anu. At least her children added laughter to her life, even though sometimes she wished she could get away from them as well. She had no clue why she was feeling conflicting emotions today. Her premenstrual symptoms seemed to be racing through her body, leaving her helpless and completely out of control with her emotions. "I'm going out, Papa," Geeta began her daily dialogue, "to pick up Anu. The maid is still here, so if you need anything, please let her know." She shut the door behind her. The cleaning maid stayed until her mother-in-law came back from chatting with her friends downstairs in the lawns. Geeta snorted as she thought they were hardly friends. Their common topic was who did what in the latest Saas Bahu serials and how they could torture their daughters-in-law in a similar fashion. That day, as Geeta stepped out of her flat, she felt defiant. She wanted to rebel, just a little, against a system that was suppressing her, a society that had constricted her, and a family that caged her. She was tired of her life, being the perfect bahu, the perfect wife, and the ideal mother. For once, she wanted to live her life on her own terms. How? She didn't yet know. But the chance was just around the corner. Little did she know that her outing for that day would lead her to take decisions she had never done before. For the first time in her life, she would be hiding things from Shailesh and the rest of the world. And she would start molding herself yet again.